Okay. Good evening to you.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, Monica. Nice to see you. Okay. So we are in unit number 10. And yesterday we finished up the um, stages of development, right? The psychosexual stages of development of Freud, right? We move on. Now we are in unit 10. And I am now dealing with 10.4.3. That is anxiety and defense mechanism, right? Sigmund Freud proposed a set of defense mechanism to one's body. These set of defense mechanism occurs so one can hold a favorable or a preferred view of themselves. For example, in a particular situation which an event occurs that violates one's preferred view of themselves, Freud stated that it is necessary for the self to have some mechanism to defend itself against this unfavorable event. This is known as defense mechanism. Freud's work on defense mechanism focused on how the ego defends itself against internal events or impulses, which are regarded as unacceptable to one's ego. These defense mechanisms are used to handle the conflict between the ego and the superego. Freud noted that the major drive for people is the reduction of tension, and major cause of tension was anxiety. So basically, this defense mechanism is used to protect oneself, right? To protect oneself, the personality, when they are anxious or when they do not know how to cope with themselves, the kind of emotions that are springing from within, the person uses a defense mechanism, right? When anxiety occurs, the mind first response is to seek rational ways of escaping the situation by increasing problem solving efforts, and a range of defense mechanisms may be triggered. These are ways that the ego develops to help deal with the id and the superego. Defense mechanisms often appear unconsciously and tend to distort or falsify reality. When the anxiety resulting in reduction of tension one experiences, Sigmund Freud noted a number of ego defenses which are noted throughout the work, but his daughter Anna Freud developed and elaborated on them. Okay, so it was begun by Freud, and then later on his daughter developed a little more on that. Now, when you're when you're listening to the different kinds of defense mechanism that we use, it is very, very common, right? It is very common, like, where you'll be able to identify that how much it is used by people. So the defense mechanism are followed. One of the first defense mechanism is denial. What is denial? The denial is to refuse to believe the information that provokes anxiety, right? For example, if somebody is diagnosed with cancer, right, immediately the person may not be able to accept that because it's a big thing for them, right? It's a terrible feeling. Suddenly realize that you are diagnosed with a very terminal kind of illness. So the first part, the first thing the person does is to deny it. Deny it and say, okay, let's try it with another doctor. Let me take some more tests. Let me go to the doctor that, I'm very comfortable or familiar with, right? Because the person is in denial, the person is not able to cope or accept that reality, that diagnosis is true. Because if he accepts that, then they start feeling anxious, right? The anxiety levels increases. So to cope with that, they are denying. Okay, so that is the one. I think this example is very appropriate. Okay. There are also other examples given here. Someone, the serious alcoholic problem means I'm not an alcoholic, right? I can't take it or leave it. Like if this person is addicted to alcohol and is afraid that because addiction has its own consequences, so he doesn't want to accept the fact that he's an alcoholic. So thereby he denies. Okay. Next is the displacement. What is displacement? Displacement is nothing but diverting a behavior away from its natural target towards a less threatening target. Displacement lets people engage in the behavior they prefer without experiencing severe anxiety. For example, this is a very common example, right? I'm hearing it for many years. Okay, I also speak about this. A man who's angry at his boss might come home and kick his dog. He really wants to kick his dog, but he was not able to do because of anxiety. Another example is the man is angry. The man is angry because his boss scolded him, And then he doesn't know how to deal with it. He comes and quarrels with his wife. So the wife gets so angry with him that he doesn't know how to deal with her anger. So she beats up her son. The son gets so angry, he doesn't know how to deal. He goes and beats up the dog. So you see how anger is getting displaced from the workplace to the home and to the children. Okay. Am I audible and clear, Monica?
Yes, ma'am, clear.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Just wanted to check because sometimes it just goes on. Okay. Intellectualization. What is intellectualization? Emotional issues are not dealt directly, but rather are handled indirectly through abstract thought. For example, a person whose spouse has just asked for a divorce may wish to dwell on issues related to the purpose of life rather than deal with the hurt and the pain. Right? So this is also intellectualization. The person actually directly, this person doesn't want to be together. Like, no, he wants a divorce. So instead of coming to the point and say, yeah, I am hurt and this is the problem, that's why I'm hurt, they try to intellectualize the whole process of why they want to get into a divorce situation, right? So many a time it happens like we also try to intellectualize and we try to justify some of our behaviors instead of simple fact accepting that we are hurt and then it is painful. Right. Next, projection. Projection is another attribution of one's own undesirable characteristic to other people is known as projection. Like there's some problem is in me, like something is happening within myself. I am not knowing how to deal with that. So what do? I project that problem onto somebody else. So instead of looking into myself, I feel threatened. I project it to somebody else. Let's see what's the example given. When a man is unhappily married, may believe that all his friends are unhappily married and share his fate. Okay. So in this way, he does not need to deal with the discomfort of his own marriage, right? So this could be anything, right? So now one person feels that maths is very hard, and the person will think that for everybody maths would be hard, but it need not be. Some people enjoy maths, but then he wants to show that everybody is feeling the same, like he wants to be counted among one of them, right? So that is the way. So that is the way he projects his feelings onto others. Next is the rationalization. What is rationalization? To explain away a poor performance, a failure, or a loss, people may excuse to lessen their anxiety and soften the disappointment. An individual who's poorly on an examination may say that he's not smart enough, that there's not enough time to study, right? Or that the examination was unfair. Or sometimes it is difficult to determine what is real and logical reason and what a rationalization is, right? So sometimes instead of accepting our own inadequacies or our own fault, like you say you do not know to dance and you say the dance floor is not good instead of saying I don't know to dance. Okay, so that's is something like rationalization. Okay, so in order to lessen the disappointment or soften the disappointment, the person may try to justify, blaming on the situation. Reaction formation. A way of avoiding an unacceptable impulse is to act the opposite extreme. By acting in a way that is opposite to disturbing desires, individuals do not have to deal with resulting anxiety. For example, a woman who hates her husband may act in excessive love and devotion so that she will not have to deal with a possible threat to her marriage that could come from a dislike of her husband. Okay, so this is reaction formation, right? Now she doesn't want to be open about it because she wants to save the relationship. So actually she doesn't like him, but she tries to show over love and she tries to show over affection, so that there is no need for the person to dislike her, and then in a way their marriage will be saved. Okay, this is reaction formation. Now regression. What is regression? A return to a more juvenile level of functioning, right? Repression is an effort to avoid anxiety of facing one's current role of life. By adopting childish role, a person can escape responsibilities and return to an earlier, perhaps more secure way of life. For example, after a new sibling is born, a 5-year-old child may start wetting the bed again, right? So this is regression. That is, regression is almost like, it is so much of the feeling that is being pushed down, right? It's a regression. Now this another child coming into the family is a threat for the older child. So many a time this older child doesn't know how to deal with the fears, how to deal with the insecurity, how to deal with the anxiety, and the older child feels that there's so much attention given to the smaller baby, and thereby, the child desires to, want love, want affection, and all. So there is a whole combination of fears, insecurities of not being wanted or allowed out. So in that process, the bedwetting is one of the reason that they have given here. Identification. By taking on the characteristics of other people, people can reduce their anxiety as well as the negative feelings. By identifying with the winning team, an individual can feel successful, even though he's got nothing to do with the victory. Identifying with the teacher, a musician, or an athlete, or an athlete may help individuals believe that they have characteristics that they do not. Then, rather than feel inferior, the individual feel satisfied and worthwhile. Like you see, sometimes in cricket, when the Indian team wins, people take it so personally. Like, it's as though they have gone to the ground and played and they feel good about that victory. I'm not saying that to feel good is bad, but what I'm saying is how much of identification happens with the athletic team, with the sports personalities, or with the movie star. Like, when Shah Rukh Khan's Pathan came and everybody thought, where, it was not very sure whether it will do well or not because there's no proper concept or whatever, right? But just because of the hero, like the film did well, people identify themselves, right? And then it went on to become a big success. So similarly with the cricket, sports stars also, it is the same. Repression. The defense mechanism of repression is motivated, forgetting, rejecting unacceptable thoughts, desires, and memories, and banishing them into unconscious. Repression is a central concept in Freud's theory. One example of repression would be a woman who sees someone murdered and later on cannot remember what she saw, right? It can also be child sexual abuse when the child is too small and frightened. Yeah, child too small and doesn't want to bring that to the memory because it is bringing so much of pain, so much of discomfort, and also they push it into the unconscious so that they don't want to remember and they forget. Okay, sublimation. What is sublimation? The transformation of sexual or aggressive energies into culturally acceptable, even admirable behavior is sublimation. According to Freud, sublimation enables a person to express the impulse without admitting its existence. For example, painting and sculpture may represent sublimation of sexual impulses. Someone with unacceptable aggressive impulses may sublimate them by becoming a surgeon. So sometimes, maybe there is so much of energy that I do not know how to deal with it and all. So I end up diverting those energies into playing a game or practicing an art. So maybe I can go for a basketball game, or maybe I can go for a rigorous exercise, maybe gymming or swimming, or maybe I can get into some kind of an artwork. So thereby, what am I doing? I'm diverting the sexual energies that are there because of my age or whatever it is. It's quite obvious. So I'm diverting those energies into creative art and creative explanation. So that is called sublimation. These differences are not under conscious control and they are unconscious and will use one or more to protect oneself from stressful situations. They are natural and normal. So all of us practice some form or the other defense mechanism at different times of our lives. And without these, neuroses develop such as anxiety states, phobias, obsessions, or hysteria. So this is very good for us because if we learn to, because of this kind of defense mechanism that we try to adopt, we can prevent ourselves from getting into anxiety disorder, or we can prevent ourselves into getting phobias of various kind, right? So in some way that whatever is unaddressed, right, emotionally or, in whatever the experiences happen, is finding its expression in different forms, right? So that is what is all about defense mechanism. Now, Freud's theory of personality has been focused on many additions, modifications, and various interpretations given to its core point. Despite many reincarnations, his theory is criticized by many, example for its perceived sexism, and it remains a focus of hot discussions as its relevant discussions on its relevance today. Even though most of his ideas have been abandoned by modern psychology, his psychoanalytic theory formed the basis of many current psychodynamic theories. Freud was the first one to discuss the unconscious mind and the role of it in the human behavior. Okay. So Sigmund Freud was one of the most influential thinkers of the 20th century, names in the psychology. There can be a little question that he influenced the earlier thinking regarding the human mind, especially the idea of there being activity within the mind at a conscious and unconscious level. This is a huge contribution of Freud. Okay, yet his approach to these topics are largely conceptual. His theoretical thoughts were original and they were unique. Right? It is a testament to Freud's mind to know that whether agree, disagree, or are ambivalent about his theory, it remains as a theoretical cornerstone in the field of expertise. So with this, we finish the defense mechanism. We move to the next theory, right? Next theory of the personality, and that is B.F. Skinner's theory. So what is B.F. Skinner's theory? We talk about behaviorism. Most prominent theorist B.F. Skinner is renowned for his research on learning, right? He is popular for that. Skinner's principle of operant conditions were never meant to be a theory of personality. However, his idea having affected thinking in all areas of psychology and have been applied to the explanation of personality structure and development. Thus, personality may be viewed as a collection of learned behavior patterns. So, what according to is the personality structure of Skinner? Skinner made no provisions for internal personality structures, similar to Freud's ego and superego, because such structures cannot be observed. Skinner showed little interest in what is going on inside people, right? He argued that it's useless to speculate about the private, unobservable on cognitive processes. Instead, he focuses on how the external environment molds over behavior. He asserted that the behavior is fully determined by the environmental stimuli. So you see, there is a completely a different direction what B.F. Skinner is talking about. Freud was focusing so much on the internal thought processes. He was talking so much about the conscious, unconscious, and the pre-conscious, the ego, superego, and then the defense mechanism. And then he also spoke about the stages of development, psychosexual stages of development. Now, Skinner is leaving all that aside. Okay, he is saying all this is something to which cannot be observed because this is all happening within the person's mind. All that you are talking about conscious. Now, he wants to look at what can be observed. What can be observed? Behavior can be observed. So you see how he says the environment is such an important factor for the behavior. So according to Skinner, people show some consistent pattern of behavior because they have some stable responses, tendencies, stable response that they have acquired through experience. These response tendencies may change in the future as a result of new experience, but they are enduring enough to create a certain degree of consistency in person's behavior. Skinner viewed an individual's personality as a collection of response tendencies that are tied to various social situations. A specific situation may be associated with a number of response tendencies that vary in strength depending on past conditioning. So similarities in response across different situations are caused by similar patterns of reinforcement that have been received in such situations in the past. Personality development. Skinner's theory accounts for personality development by explaining how various response tendencies are required to learning. He believed that most human responses are shaped by type of conditioning. What do I do if I have to be the co-host? Do I need to alter something here? Monica, any idea?
No, ma'am, no need.
No need, no. I just accept that I'm the co-host. Okay. So the type of kind Skinner maintained that environmental consequences, right? That is the reinforcement, punishment, and extension determine people's patterns of responding. If you study how B.F. Skinner's, the way he was, like, it is, he was also conducting experiments with animals, and then he tried to use the reinforcement, extension, all this on even children too. So what is reinforcement? A good behavior. If the child is behaving good, if you appreciate the child will reinforce the same behavior again. Right? So affirmations, appreciation, all this is a value to the child. Okay, so that will help the child to reinforce the same behavior. Extension is it also works positively, right? But it is a negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement means if the child is not behaving appropriately, So what you do, you just leave the child alone. You're not beating, not doing anything. Just leave the child alone, just ignore for some time, right? If the child is falling down on the ground and crying, you just leave. You don't do anything. Automatically, after some time, the child will get up and she'll become normal. So that is extension, right? So reinforcement, punishment, and extension. So he talks about all the positive rewards, the negative reinforcement, and positive reinforcement, and all that. Okay. So, B.F. Skinner's tendencies are constantly being strengthened or weakened by new experiences. Skinner's theories view personality development as a continuous, lifelong journey. Unlike Freud and many other theorists, Skinner saw no reason to break the developmental process into stages because he believed that as they keep growing up, they'll have new learnings, right? As they develop, as they gain experiences, and that experiences will be built on the new experiences that keeps happening. So he didn't break that into any kind of a stages, nor did he attribute special importance to early child experiences. Skinner believed that conditioning in human operates much the same as the rats and the pigeons that he studied in his laboratory. Hence, he assumed that conditioning strengthens and weakens the tendency responses mechanically. This is without the person's conscious participation. Thus, Skinner was able to explain consistencies in behavior, that is the personality, without being concerned about individuals' cognitive processes. Okay. Skinner believed, yeah. So I think you can just keep reading that as just reinforcing the same. Believe that simply human nature that we believe in such a way that you would receive rewards or favorable things. If you want to experience reinforcement, then we should develop personality traits that are positive, such as those attributes included in the agreeableness category of Big Five, being understanding, compassionate, empathy, and positive thinker. In this sense, Skinner argued that we respond to every kind of reinforcement and that our behavior and personality traits can be shaped and controlled by the society. In addition to this, Skinner implied that if we want our negative traits to be changed into positive one, we must change our environment first. The strict behaviorist point of view tries to refute the other psychologists' belief that we must alter our inner self first. Okay, so the whole focus is on conditioning. He built on this previous people who spoke about the repetitive habits where people get conditioned to give an auto response and how negative and positive reinforcement works. Okay, so with this, we complete the unit 10, right? You have a summary, which is easy for you to just go through. There is also, you can check the progress. And then there are model questions and glossary also. So now we move on to unit 11, right? So unit 11, what does it talk about? Personality theories. Here the main people who are, who we are going to discuss is, one is Carl Rogers, right? Who talks about the humanistic theory. Another one is Cattell's factor theory. And the last one is the explain big factor phi theory. Okay, so there are different types, different theories of personality in psychology, and each theory focuses on different dimensions of personality, and they also differ in approaches in understanding human behavior. So, humanistic psychologists like Carl Rogers, Abraham Maslow, they viewed individuals as more positive and generative, self-generative, and that the personality development revolves around self-actualization. You remember the Maslow's theory of self-actualization, where he talks about the different levels a person needs in order to reach the self-actualization, right? So trait theories like Raymond Cattell, Gordon Allport, and Hans Heinzig propose that we can understand and predict human behavior only when we observe the stable characteristics called the traits. Raymond Cattell has used statistical analysis technique like the factor analysis to identify personality traits, and finally identified 16 personality factors. Similarly, contemporary personality theories believe that there are 5 dimensions to a personality, which are often referred to as the big 5 personality traits. This is contrast to Allport's identification of 4,500 traits, Cattell's 16 traits, and Heinzig's 3 traits. In this unit, we will discover the 3 personality theories, namely Rogers' humanistic theory, Cattell's factor theory, and the last, the big factor theory. Okay. Monica, would you like to read Carl Rogers' humanistic view?
Yes, ma'am.
One of the very interesting psychologists is Carl Rogers. Like, and a lot of the Carl Rogers type of approaches is also used in the psychological counseling. Yeah, let us read about the Rogers humanistic theory.
Carl Rogers, an American psychologist and a Nobel Prize winner, is a popular humanistic psychologist, and he proposed a theory called self theory. Before we discuss Rogers' theory in detail, let us try to understand the humanistic approach to personality. The theories of Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow are very popular theories, humanistic approach, and they emerged in 1950s and 1960s. Humanistic theories rejected both psychoanalytical theory and behavioristic theories, as psychoanalysts and behaviorists are too mechanistic and often emphasize less noble aspects of people's thoughts and actions. Humanistic theories emphasize people's inherent goodness and their tendency to move toward higher levels of functioning. They claim the people make deliberate and conscious decisions about what to do with their life. For humanists, it is fruitless to ascribe human behavior to past rewards and punishments or to unconscious thought process. Humanistic psychology is more hopeful and optimistic about humans. It believes that an individual possesses within him or herself the potentialities for healthy and creative growth. The failure to realize the potentialities is due to the constricting and distorting influences of parental training, education, schooling, and other social pressures. They focus on the ability of human beings to think consciously and rationally, to control their biological urges, and to achieve their full potential. Further, in the view of humanists, people have the freedom and will to change their attitudes and behaviors. They are responsible for their lives and actions.
Okay, very good. So now, this Rogers humanistic theory, what is the thing that they want to focus on? They want to believe that every human person has an inherent goodness in themselves. Every person has a potentiality. Every person has a capacity to be able to deal with their own issues and deal with their own problems. So they don't want to get into all those reinforcement, negative behaviors and all that. What they say is, since all the goodness, all the potentialities, all the capacities are already inherent in the human person, we can just help the person to be able to recognize the value that is in them, right? So humanistic perspective, that is a humanistic theory, is very, very focused towards very looking at the positive angle of what is inherent in the human beings, right? Now what we already have, the potentialities, the gifts, and everything that is intrinsic within us, right? So that is why his theory is mostly based on this self theory and basic concepts. So that's why you see Carl Rogers talking about comprise different features, and some of the important features are self concept, types of self, positive regard, conditional and unconditional regard, and congruence. These are the things Carl Rogers is focusing on. Now you look at self concept. What is self concept? Rogers'
The
theory of personality is self. In his view, self-concept includes all thoughts, feelings, and beliefs people have about themselves. And he also believes that people have got this from the kind of experiences that they have had in their own personal life. Like in the previous paragraph, we saw how parental training, like, in what kind of environment the child grew, right? What kind of parenting the child went through influences to a large extent what the child thinks and believes about himself, what the child thinks and believes about others, and in reality the child forms his or her own self concept. So that is what he is saying. It is composed of perceptions of the characteristics of I or me, and the perceptions of relationships of the I and me to others, to various aspects of life, together with value attached to these perceptions. The self is our inner personality. So according to Rogers, he says, the self, what we talk about, is the inner personality and can be likened to a soul, right? That is why he thinks that there is so much of potentiality in this soul. There is so much of giftedness in this soul. There is so much of positive quality, positivity in this human soul, right? Or Freud's psyche, according to Freud. Individuals compare or evaluate every experience in relation to their self-concept. People want to behave in ways that are consistent with self-concept. The self-concept is influenced by experiences a person has in his life and the interpretation of those experiences. Two primary sources that influence our self-concept are childhood experiences and evaluation by others. Okay, so these are the main thing. As a child, what the child experiences life, what kind of parenting training the child has undergone, and what is the kind of feedback the child gets from the environment, from the people who are outside, maybe relatives, neighbors, peers, friends, school friends, and the family itself, right, is very, very important. So he says self-concept has three components. One is the self-worth, self-image, and ideal self. This is according to Rogers. One is the self-worth, self-image, and the ideal self. What is self-worth? Self-worth refers to what we think about ourselves. Feelings of self-worth are developed in the early childhood and are formed most strongly from the interaction of the child with the mother, father, and other main care providers, right? So self-worth is very important. You see, sometimes many students, they do not have self-worth, right? When you don't have self-worth, it is easy to put down yourself. It is easy to humiliate yourself. It is easy to insult yourself, and it is easy for us to get into negative thinking, right? Many of the suicide that happens because the person comes to a point where the person feels there is no self-worth. There is no point of living. There's no point of moving forward because the self-worth is so low. So, but Freud says that these feelings come from, childhood experiences and the kind of environment. If the child is brought up in a positive environment, and if there are parents who have done excellent parenting, who are given space for the child, who have affirmed the child, encourage the child, motivate the child will develop into a very good, not only have a good self-concept, but also a very good self-worth issue. Right. Self-image. What is self-image? Is how we see ourselves. It includes physical qualities and emphasize the influence of body image on the formation of personality. For example, an individual may perceive himself as a good or a bad person, beautiful or ugly. The self-image has an effect on how person thinks, feels, and behave in the world. Right? There are many beautiful girls. Sometimes they feel that they are not good looking. Right? They feel, they feel that they are not so great looking. They feel maybe they should have been a little more taller, a little more, fairer. All this is to do with the self-image. So sometimes you can have body dysmorphic disorders because of poor self-image. When you think that you are not beautiful, you are not good enough, you don't look good, right? Like the way you look at yourself in the mirror, you are not happy about it, right? So yes, feeling inferior, very good. So constantly comparing yourself with others, right? And saying that I am not good, she's more fair than me, she's more tall. Okay, so all this is coming in the self concept, like how you think about yourself. Ideal self. Ideal self refers to ideas of how we would like to be or the kind of person we want to be. It consists of goals and ambitions in life. The ideal self is not static and it is dynamic. It changes as we grow. For example, the ideal self in childhood may not be the same in adolescence. Okay. So, ideal self is something that I wish I would be like this, right? Or sometimes as children, we say, when I grow up, I would like to be like this person, right? I would like to dance like Madhuri Dixit, probably. Or I would like to be an actress like Kajol, right? Or I would like to be, maybe, what is that, Noori, that Coca-Cola MD, so all empowered women like that. No? That is the ideal self. What I want to be, I'm not yet, right? So this ideal self is in the process of change. It is not static. It is constantly dynamic. That means it is changing. So what we were in child, we will not be in adolescent, and what we will be in adolescent, we will not be like an adult or a woman. So that is about it. Okay, now Roger is focusing so much on the self-worth, right? For Rogers, a person who has high self-worth, right, that is confidence and positive feelings about himself or her, faces challenges in life, accepts failures and unhappiness at times, and is open with people. In contrast with people with low self-worth, may avoid challenges in life and may not accept the life can also be painful and unhappy at sometimes. Okay, so he's explaining in a detailed manner here, right? He believes that self-worth and positive regard are closely linked. A child who received unconditional positive regard will tend to have high self-worth, while a child who receives conditional regard will have low self-worth. Now, what is this positive regard? No, anyway, down they have already, already explained. So when we come down, I will explain a little more data. Otherwise, we will be duplicating. So according to Carl Rogers, a person with self-worth, like a child, if he is experiencing unconditional positive regard, will have a tendency to have high sense of worth. And if the child who is experiencing conditional positive regard will experience low sense of worth. Okay, we will understand a little more when we come. Now, positive regard. He explains positive regard. Rogers believes that everyone has a need for positive regard or the acceptance, love, and approval from others. Among many things that individuals instinctive value is a positive regard. That is what we regarded positively by others. Meaning to say, we need to feel valued, we need to feel validated, respected, treated with affection and love. Right? Then the self-regards develop self-worth. Positive regard involves two conditions, unconditional positive regard and conditional positive. Okay, in simple understanding, if you want to know what is this positive regard and what is this unconditional conditional regard is, when you talk about, when Rogers makes a distinction between unconditional positive regard, what does he say? What does he mean? He means that suppose a child, many a time we have experiences of conditional love, right? We do not experience unconditional love. All the time, as children, we are told, you do well and you'll get a gift. You write, you score high, you get 90, I'll get you a cycle, right? If you get 80, I'll get you this. If you do, all the time, the parents or the elders, they keep putting conditions to the child in the growing up years. So what does the child think? In order to be regarded, the child feels that they should always be scoring high and they should always be coming first in class. Now, in a classroom of 60, how many people can come first? Only one child can come first. The other children will go as per the norm, second, third, fourth. But if all the parents want the children to come first, it's a very difficult proposition, right? So unconditional positive regard is something that even if you don't do so well, you have tried, but even if you don't do so well, you'll still be loved, you'll still be valued, your feelings will still be validated, you'll still be empathetic towards the child, and you will show understanding towards the child and help the child to perform better. Okay, so this is what. And we are talking about condition, we are putting conditions. When you are talking about unconditional, we are talking there is no conditions at all. Okay, so that is what he says it here. Right? So it means that the child is loved or accepted only when the child behaved in a way approved by the parents. And he is not loved for what he is. That means the child is not loved for just because he's a child, a human person, a thinking, feeling person, a person who has his own ideologies, a person who has his own thought process, his own experiences, a human person is loved because of what he has achieves or what he performs, right? So that is the attachment. In other words, to love or to accept a child, conditions have to be fulfilled, right? As a consequence, the child constantly tries to seek approval from others rather than trying out new things. They may discourage the child from moving towards accomplishment of ideal self. For the people who are able to self-actualize are more likely to have received unconditional positive regard from others, especially from their parents in childhood. Like if the child is given enough of space, enough of freedom to choose the kind of subject the child wants to choose, if the child is able to look within and say, okay, this is what I love to do, this is what I love to study, right? And the parents know, they respect and they value what the child has in him or her, what happens? It becomes easy for the child to move towards self-actualization. In fact, they find themselves, they discover themselves as to who they are, what is the purpose in life, what is the specific talents that they have, the unique qualities, the unique gifts that they themselves have. And with that, they experiment, they explore, and they keep moving towards understanding, just not understanding, but also finding themselves and their purpose in life, which is the highest level of self-actualization, right? And when we don't do that, what happens? When we keep on putting conditions, the child will not be able to reach the self-actualization. Because when you are putting conditions, you are directing the child to go to where you want to go, right? The child may be interested in arts, but you are pushing the child towards computer science, and the child may not perform, and in the process may fail. And then you keep shouting at the child, then you say you're not doing well, then you keep tuition, and then so many other things happen. And thereby we put blocks for the child to move towards self-actualization. So that is about the positive regard, that is unconditional and conditional. The next is the congruence and the incongruence. What is this congruence and the incongruence? Roger introduced the concept of congruence in 1950s. In his personality theory, to understand the concept of congruence, we need to understand the type of self. Rogers divided self into two categories. That is the ideal self and the real self. The ideal self is the person that one would like to be, right? That is in the future, my ideal self. The real self is the person one actually is. That is right now what I am is the real self. What I would want to be will be the ideal self. Rogers focused on that idea that we need to achieve consistency between these two selves. That is, he wanted these two selves to match, the real self and the ideal self. When the real and the ideal self are close to each other, then there is consistency and congruency between the two. That is when a person's ideal self and actual experiences are consistent or very similar, a state of congruences exists. In contrast, if a person's ideal self is not consistent with what actually happens in life, differences may exist, right, between person's ideal self and actual experience. This state is called the incongruence. The discrepancy between the real self and the ideal self is large. People may get dissatisfied and maladjusted. The development of congruence is depending on unconditional positive regard. Only when the child is encouraged to move towards his own or her own dreams, given the kind of unique self the person is, then the congruence will happen. When the child is constantly blocked from achieving towards or moving towards self-acceptance, then what happens? The gap between the real self and the ideal self widens and incongruence is okay. So this is about that. And the next thing is the self-actualization. Carl Rogers believed that you am at 6, that humans have one basic motive, that is the tendency to self-actualize, to realize one's full potential and achieve peak performance, like a flower that will grow to its potential if all the conditions are favorable. So people will flourish and reach their peak if their environment are favorable. The children raised in an environment unconditional positive regard have the opportunity to fully actualize themselves. Further, Carl Rogers also believed that for a person to achieve self-actualization, they must be in a state of congruence. In sum, self-actualization requires unconditional positive regard from parents or significant others, and also the experiences of congruence between self and the ideal self, right? So this is all about self-actualization, right? It's very common, especially when the children are not performing well, they are going down in grades, right? When they are sent for counseling, and in the counseling room, you'll be able to find out that child was never interested in this particular subject. He or she was pushed because everybody said it is a very, very popular subject. Computer science is the thing. So you take BSc computer science. But the child was not at all interested, right? So what is happening? The child will not move towards self-actualization. Rather, the child will develop other issues, right? Other issues. The dream of ideal self and the real self will not come closer to one another, right? So thereby, self-actualization will remain a dream for the child. Next, 19 proposition. Rogers' personality theory was based on 19 propositions. Some of the propositions include, yeah, Monica would like to read, or anybody else who's there like to read? 19 propositions.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Rogers' personality theory was based on 19 propositions. Some of the propositions include individuals exist in a constantly changing world of their world own experience of which they are at the center. Individuals react to the field as it is
Okay,
experienced
that is
and
very clear, no? It is very simple. Okay, we exist in a changing world, so everything is subject to change. Okay, so once upon a time, we must have been the center in our homes. But later on, as we move on, we move to farm, we move to school, we form peers, and we have relationship. Okay, so the focus from us is moved on to others. We are no longer the center of the universe. Okay, yeah, move on.
individuals react to the field as it is experienced and perceived. This perceptual field is reality for the individuals. Individuals
Yes.
have one basic tendency and striving to actualize, maintain, and enhance the experiencing organism. Behavior is basically goal directed and it is the expression of the individual to satisfy his needs as they are perceived. The best way of understanding the behavior is from the internal frame of reference of the individual himself. Any experience inconsistent with the structure of the self may be perceived as a threat. As a result of interaction with the environment, and particularly as a result of evaluational reaction with others, the structure of the self is formed, which is organized, fluid, but consistent. Psychological maladjustment is essentially the result of the individual's refusal to become of significant experiences. The
Okay.
fully functioning
Yeah.
person.
So you see how this is basically how you perceive your own self, right? How you see yourself. Frame of reference is what kind of glasses. If I'm, if my childhood experiences, if my belief systems are very faulty, what happens? It impacts my perception. I develop faulty perceptions. So when I speak from a particular frame of reference, the reference that I got through my experiences that need not have been positive, right? So many a time I will interpret reality, I will interpret my experience through the kind of glasses that I'm wearing, right? So the kind of perception that I have about myself. That is what in a simple manner, but he has put down in points and is told. Yeah, next.
The fully functioning person. According to
Mm.
Rogers, individuals continually aim to fulfill their full potential. He described this as the good life. In his words, this process of the good life is not, I am convinced, a life for the faint hearted. It involves the stretching and growing of becoming more and more of one's potentialities. It involves the courage to be. It means launching oneself fully into the stream of life. Rogers, 1961. Further, he listed the following characteristics of a fully functioning person:
Yes.
a growing openness to experience. They
Yeah.
move away
So
from
according
defense.
to him, this is the fully functioning person. Is the fully functioning person is not weak at heart, is not faint-hearted, but is strong, is courageous, is opening for new experiences, and is listed out some of the qualities here. Yeah, go on.
A growing openness to experience. They move
Mm.
away from defensiveness and have no need for subception, a perceptual defense that involves unconsciously applying strategies to prevent a troubling stimulus from entering consciousness. An
Mm.
increasingly existential lifestyle, they live each moment fully, not distorting the moment to fit personality or self-concept, but allowing personality and self-concept to emanate from the experience. This result in excitement, daring, adaptability, tolerance, spontaneity, and a lack of rigidity. Increasing organic trust. They trust their own judgment and their ability to choose behavior that is appropriate for each moment. They do not rely on existing codes and social norms, but trust that as they are open to new experiences, they will be able to trust their own sense of right and wrong. Freedom of choice. They are able to make a wider range of choices more fluidly. They believe that they play a role in determining their own behavior and so feel responsible for their own behavior. Creativity. They feel free to be creative. They will also be more creative in the way they adapt to their own circumstances without feeling a need to conform. Reliability and constructiveness. They act constructively. An individual who is open to all their needs will be able to maintain a balance between them. Even aggressive needs will be matched and balanced by intrinsic goodness in congruent individuals. A richful life. They describe the life of the fully functioning individuals as rich, full, and exciting, and suggest that they experience joy and pain, love and heartbreak, fear and courage more intensely.
Okay, so you see how nicely is given the explanation of a fully functional person. Fully functional is a person is not a person who's only experienced the positives of life. Fully functional person is a person who's open to life, anything that life throws at him, whether it is pain, whether it is sorrow, whether it is brokenness, whether there are breakups. Despite all this, when the person is able to look within, person is able to nurture the goodness within, the person is able to look at their own self-worth and keep moving on, learning the lessons of life, right? Because positive experience gives joy and the negative experience gives learning. So this person takes both together and they move on to become a fully functional person. This is Carl Rogers' humanistic theory. Okay, we move on to Cattell's factor theory. There are different approaches to study of personality, and one such approach is trait theory. Raymond Cattell, a British American psychologist and a factor analytic trait theorist, developed a theory based on factor analysis. Factor analysis is a mathematical procedure for reducing a large number of factors to a few general factors. It has introduction of application of multivariate analytic personality assessment and a theory which is examined simultaneously the relationship among the multiple variables. From factor analytic approach, a new era has emerged in personality research, which is marked by greater objectivity, quantification, and identification of underlying source trait. While developing the theory, Cattell used the traits, about 4,000 identified by Gordon Allport, as starting point for his analysis of personality. He initially identified about 171 traits from Allport's list, and by combining common characteristics and eliminating the uncommon traits. Okay, so this is the process used. Then using a statistical technique known as the factor analysis, he identified closely related terms and eventually reduced this list to 16 personality factors. It is called 16 ppf, right? The 16 factors are also called source traits. Later, many researchers repeated Cattell's analysis. He observed that the personality can be analyzed into identifiable source traits that are common to all people, right? However, people differ in the degree or intensity or position of trial. This means that each person has all the 16 traits to a certain degree, but they may have some traits higher or lower than the other. For Cattell, a trait is a mental structure with which one can draw or inference from observed behavior to account for regularity or consistency in behavior. Before we discuss in detail the factors or the traits identified by Cattell, let us discuss the trait theories, briefing, and the meaning of a trait that would help in understanding the theory, right? So let us look at what is this trait theory is all about. It's an approach to study the personality. Trait theories are primarily interested in the measurement of traits, which can be defined as habitual patterns of behavior, thought, and emotions. According to this perspective, traits are relatively stable over time, differ across individuals, and influence behavior. They are basic tendencies and remain stable across the lifespan. But characteristics behavior can change considerably through adaptive process. According to the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, that is the DSM of the American Psychological Association, APA, the personality traits are prominent aspects of personality that are exhibited in a wide range of important social and personal contexts. Trait theories like Gordon Allport, Raymond Cattell, and Hans Heinzek viewed the human behavior can be understood by observing the stable characteristics called the traits. Gordon Allport now, before also we have read here 4,000, from which he brought it down. Okay, then Heinzek was a personality theorist who focused on innate and genetically based personality differences: introversion, extroversion, neuroticism, inability, and psychotism. While Heinzek has reduced personality traits to a relatively small number, that is only 3, by using factor analysis technique. Cattell has identified 16 personality factors by collecting information from different sources and applying factor analysis technique. Okay. Now, according to, unlike Heinzek, Cattell based the theory on various sources rather than just self-reporting. In Cattell's view, there are 3 major sources of data about personality, and he collected the information from 3 sources in order to apply factor analysis to personality theory as detailed here. So here we have these 3 live data, right? It relates to life record, and it is also involves collection of data from individuals' natural everyday life behavior and measuring their characteristic behavior patterns in the real world. This could range from number of traffic accidents or number of parties attended each month to grade school, etc. So it will depend on what kind of traits these people are trying to get out from. Experimental data involves responses to standardization experimental situation created in the lab, where the subject's behavior can be objectively observed and measured. Okay, so this is done in the laboratory. It relates to data obtained through experiments or objective tests. The third one is the questionnaire data, which relates to self-reports and involve responses based on the introspection by the individuals about their own behavior and feeling. We found this kind of a direct question often measured subtle internal states and viewpoints that might be hard to see or measure in the external behavior. Okay, so types of traits. The trait is the most important concept in Raymond Cattell's factor analytic approach to personality. He proposed on the basis of factor analysis the two types of traits, namely source traits and surface traits, form a part of individual's personality. While surface traits are visible to any observer, source traits are underlying factors, the surfaces traits. Let us now discuss the source traits and the surfaces. Here it is given in the detail. Now, what are source traits? They are causal factors that determines how a person will respond to the environment. According to Cattell, source traits are simple structure factor and they represent the underlying factors responsible for the intercorrelation among surface traits. He considered them as building blocks of personality. He identified 16 primary traits, factors of personality. He called these factors source traits because he believed they provide underlying source for the observable sources for the observable surface behavior. He believed that most people have about 16 source traits. Some source traits are genetically determined and they are called constitutional traits. Other source traits are shaped by one's culture and they are called environmental molded traits. In some, source traits are the roots of all behavior. He considers source trait to be more influential than the surface traits in studying the personality. Now, this is the 16 personality factors identified by Cattell, right? It is very easy. You can just go through whenever you are free in a list. Can you see that? Abstractedness versus imagery versus practical, apprehension versus confident, dominant, forceful versus submissive. Yeah, can you see that? Are you with me? Am I audible? Yes, okay. So according to trait theories, like Cattell theory is continuing of personality trait. This means that each person has all these traits in certain degree, but they may have high in some and low in others. So people differ only in degree to which trait is expressed. For example, all people have some degree of abstractedness, but some people have very imaginative while others are very practical. You observe that the individual trait displayed different development patterns at different stages. For example, the anxiety factor tends to be high in adolescence and drops steadily in young adulthood and rise again in old age. Okay. Now those are source. Now here it is surface traits. Another type of trait is the surface trait. These are simple sets of behavior shown by individual surface traits or manifestations of underlying source traits or produced by interaction of underlying source traits. These traits characteristics can be observed in situation. For example, there is a person who is friendly and helpful. On the basis of interaction with them or observation of behavior, one can conclude that he possesses the trait of sociability. Right? Identifying those two qualities, you can determine that this person is a very social with everyone. His sociability skill is a surface trait in Cattell's term. These behavioral patterns tend to appear and disappear together, which represent clusters of related behaviors. He has also categorized the surface traits in three types. They are ability, temperament, and dynamic traits. A brief description of each category is given below, okay, which is very, very simple and easy to understand. So you can just read this up. What are ability traits, right? How well an individual performs a task. The most important ability trait is intelligence. Cattell described two kinds of intelligence, namely fluid intelligence and crystallized intelligence. Fluid intelligence is general problem solving ability and is thought to be genetically determined. And thus an innate ability, crystallized intelligence is learned through experience and learning. So you see two traits are coming out. One is that just comes out because of the genes, because it is running in the family, that one is good at certain things, like maybe playing a music or maybe in the art or maybe solving problems and all. Crystallized is something that comes with the experiment. The next one is the temperament traits. These are constitutional and determined persons' emotional makeup, right? The kind of temperament, are these persons constantly, upset? Are they constantly angry? Are they always pleasant, always cheerful, right? That determines the temperament of the person. Then dynamic traits are those that make the person to move towards a goal. In other words, that determines a person's motivational makeup. They spring from hereditary or environment. Okay, so that is the dynamic trait. Now, types of dynamic trait, they have again given, further classified into, three kinds, namely attitudes, erga, sentiments. Let us discuss these traits. Okay, what are attitude? An attitude refers to a specific course of action or is a desire to act in response to a given situation. Similarly, an attitude of a particular person can be of interest of certain intensity in some course of action with respect of some object. So they are given the example, I very much want to have a bike. Here, very much refers to the intensity of interest. To have indicates course of action, and bike refers to object or goal. So you can take any example what you want to have very much, right? When you use these kind of terminologies, that shows the intensity of the emotion. Erga, X was the innate drive or motives which permits a person to attend to certain classes or objects more readily than others, to experience a specific emotion therefrom to enter an activity. The activity ceases completely after the attainment of specific goal. Some of the urges, according to Catala, hunger, sex, curiosity, security, anger, fear, gregariness, etc. Okay, so all these comes like an impulsive trait. Sentiments. A sentiment is an environmentally more dynamic trait acquired through learning. They focus on social objects such as one's parents, friends, college, etc. These are traits that can satisfy several urges at the same time. For cattle, the self sentiment was the most powerful sentiment and organized the entire personality. This is the self concept which provides stability and coherence to expression of source, traits, urges, and sentiment. For example, self sentiment for the country, parents, elders, etc. Right. Genetic basic trait. What is the genetic basic trait? Cattle and Hansick believe that human personality is largely the product of genetics and not environment. Thus, both are rated as high on biological influences and very low on social factors. For example, cattle has found relatively high heritability values for both fluid intelligence, that is, the ability to adapt a new material, and crystallize in, which depends on prior learning, suggesting that intelligence is more due to hereditary than to environment. Yeah. Now we come to the big five factor theory. What is it? There are many theories of personality. In preceding pages, we have discussed two important: Carl Rogers' humanistic theory, right? And then Cattler's factor theory. Another important is the big five theory. Now, what is this? Evolution of big five. How did this evolution happen of the big five theory? The root of development of big five theory can be found in the attempts of Gordon Allport, that is 1936. He identified about 4,000 personality terms or traits by reviewing dictionaries, particularly Webster's dictionary. Later, Raymond Cattell used the list of traits identified by Allport as the starting point for his analytical personality. He initially identified about 171. Actually, we already gone through this. Okay, so we straight away come to Wu Zi, Levin Goldberg, along with the other three point researchers. Okay, we come to the five common factors. Goldberg has first used the term Big Five in 1981. Paul Costa and Robert Makara also conducted extensive research in personality psychology. They initially identified three factors, namely neuroticism, extraversion, and openness, and continued their work. They later added two more factors, namely agreeableness and conscientiousness. In 1985, Costa and Makara developed a new inventory to measure about 5 dimensions of personality. According to the five-factor model as developed by Costa and Makara, human personality can essentially be reduced to 5 super traits. The empirical literature largely collected its recent decades substantiates the finding that these 5 factors from basic ingredients of human personality. Evidence of this area has been growing up over 50 years, beginning with the research of Chris 1949 and later expounded by the other researchers. Okay, though there are some disagreement among the researchers about the exact label of each dimension, the factors described in the following paragraph are most commonly used. Costa and Macri developed inventories, namely NEO personality inventory, to measure 5 factors or dimensions of personality. The 5 factors detailed by Costa and Macri are. See, sometimes in the internet you find this also a free test. You can also try this big 5 factors, right? Then you will find some of the traits that you have. Right here, they have focused on 5, that is extravision, agreeableness, conscientiousness, neuroticism, and openness. So, what is neuroticism? It refers to the tendency to experience negative feelings such as fears, sadness, embarrassment, guilt, disgust, all this. People with high neuroticism are emotionally reactive. They respond emotionally to events that would be affect most people, and their reactions tend to be more intense than normal. They are mostly likely to interpret ordinary situation as more threatening than other people. Individuals who score low in neuroticism, that is NEO 5 factor personality inventory of Costa, are emotionally stable. They are usually calm, even-tempered, relaxed, and are able to face stressful situations without becoming upset. This domain is also contrast with emotional stability. In some, higher scores on neuroticism are anxious, temperamental, self-pitying, self-conscious, emotional, vulnerable, and low scores are calm, even-tempered. So the low scores are just opposite the high scores. Move towards extraversion. What is this now? Pronouns as engagement with the external world. Extraversions are sociable and they enjoy being with people. In addition to liking people and preferring large groups and gatherings, extroverts are also assertive, active, and talkative. They like excitement and stimulation and also tend to be cheerful and disposable. People and also the people engaged in enterprising occupation represent the extroverts in our culture. On the other side, introverts are reserved rather than unfriendly, independent, rather than follows and even phased than the sluggish. Introverts may say that they are shy and they prefer to be alone. They do not necessarily suffer from social anxiety. Finally, although they are given in the exuberant high spirits of extroverts, introverts are not unhappy or pessimistic. In some high scores on the tests are affectionate, joiner, talkative, fun-loving, active, and passionate, and low scores are reserved, loner, quiet, sober, passive, and unfeeling. Okay, so this is the kind of personality. Next, openness to experience. Right? You read up, I think it's very, very simple. Openness to experience is nothing but they are people who are very open to what the life throws at them, the life experiences. Right? They are open to learn, they are open to move, they are open to grow, they are open to become, use their imagination, become independent, right? And people who score low on openness scale tend to be conventional in behavior, conservative in outlook. They prefer familiar things to novel things, right? Although open individuals are unconventional and have a tendency to question authority, they need not be treated as unprincipled. They follow principle conscientiously, as a traditionalist does. Similarly, closed people should not be treated as authoritarian due to conservativeness. In short, high scores on openness are imaginative, creative, original, curious, liberals, and so these are just the personality traits, and so we don't judge them by that they are negative or positive. Okay, agreeableness. What is agreeableness? It is an important dimension of interpersonal tendencies like that of extroversion. Agreeable people are altruistic in nature. Altruistic means they have higher goals, right? They think about reaching quite greater heights like self-actualization. They're sympathetic to others, eager to learn, and also believe others will help equally. Agreeable people are considerate, friendly, generous, helpful, willing to compromise their interests with others. They have optimistic view of others. On the other side, antagonistic or disagreeable people are egocentric. Okay, so whatever is the one is the extreme positive, the other one is the extreme. This is the personality trait. Okay, and that is what is about the low scorers. Some high scorers are agreeable, are soft-hearted, trusting, and generous. Low scorers are ruthless, suspicious, critical, and irritable. Conscientiousness is concerned with the way which we control, regulate, and direct our impulses. Conscientious individuals avoid trouble and achieve high level of success through purposeful planning and persistence. They also regard as intelligent. Igman Tekmoto Chalk refer to a domain as will to achieve. On the positive side, high concept is associated with academic and occupational achievement. On the negative side, high concentrations people may not be compulsive perfectionists like neatness and workaholic. Conscientious is the aspect of what once called as a character of high scorers or conscientious scale are scrupulous, punctual, and reliable. Low are not necessarily lacking in moral principles, but they also have exact applying them as they are more lackadaisical, lacking in moral principle, but they are also less exact applying them as they are working towards their goals. In short, high scorers are conscientious and hardworking, well organized, punctual, ambitious, and low scores are negligent, lazy, disorganized, and late, aimless, and quitting. The facets of Big Five factor, Costa and McVicker also identified 6 specific facets of each domain to ensure a comprehensive understanding of 5 factors of personality and to cover a wide range of relevant thoughts, feelings, and actions. According to them, facets are specific traits and domain or factors is a cluster of facets. In other words, factors are defined by groups or interrelated correlated traits. The 5 broad domains and 30 specific facets together give a comprehensive picture of the personality of individuals. Okay. So there again, they are given the different type following other different dimension, neuroticism facet, extravision facets, right? So same thing is repeated here, but in a concise form. So with this, we come to the end of the unit 11. And again, you have a summary here given. Okay. And then there is a checklist for progress and model and glossary. So with this, we complete the complete syllabus of cognitive psychology. Do we still have time? What is the time now, Monica?
5:35.
5:35. Okay, we are just on time. Okay, anything you want to ask me?
Ma'am, do you have model papers?
There are no model papers given. What is given in your book only are the model papers. At the end of your book, can you see the question and answers?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, those only are the model papers. Otherwise, you have to go online and check. We don't have any papers with us. I mean, they are not given to us. So we also go to the net only and search. Okay.
Okay,
So,
ma'am.
all the very best to you. Thank you, Monica, for agreeing to step in and read. And I wish you all the very best. So as the lesson goes, have a unconditional positive regard to yourself, like what Carl Rogers says, right? The humanistic theory, right? Believe that you have a intrinsic value, that your self-concept and your self-esteem levels will always be high. When we believe that you are a beautiful soul, that you are a divine expression of life, and that you have seeds of greatness in you, right? So believe in yourself, speak positively to yourself, keep affirming yourself every day. Every day, tell yourself that I am a divine creation, all is well in my world, right? I am confident in everything I do. I am at peace with myself. I am at peace with the universe. All relationships are in harmony, right? This way, you affirm yourself and you create your own self-worth, right? Which will impact your self-esteem. Yes, even after having low. Yeah, but for me, every person is precious. Even if there is only one person, I will still go ahead with the class, right? And all of us, we have a freedom to make our own choices. Probably the ones who are not able to attend, maybe they have different commitments, maybe because we don't know the reasons, whatever it is. But I'm glad for whoever came. Thank you very much, and God bless you, and all the very best to you. Okay?
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, so with this, I end the class.
Uh, t- t- Thank you, ma'am. Bye, ma'am.